So with this new speed, we've also seen a rise in vibe coding. The data is starting to show that AI-generated code frequently contains vulnerabilities, and that's creating a real chasm between fast development and secure enterprise-grade software.
We're seeing the same stats, particularly 30-50% of code generated having vulnerabilities, which is wild. And so some of the key problems definitely are that there's a misunderstanding of using these technologies to go super fast, and I can go to market quickly, but then I have a responsibility twice as much to review code humanly, or to analyze it, or to just make sure that other humans sign it off and to review it right before it gets to production.
How does it empower developers and security teams, and beyond what you would get from homegrown AI solutions?
We provide end-to-end testing, right? So from the moment the line of code is written, whether by humans or AI, we apply dozens of thousands of code analysis rules, secret scanning, license tracking, composition analysis to check vulnerabilities of the libraries being used. And we do that immediately as code is being written in IDEs. And we cover 60 to 70% of IDEs in the market.
Welcome back to the Security Strategist Podcast, your blueprint for evolving cybersecurity. My name is Richard Stiennon, and I will be your host for this episode. I'm the Chief Research Analyst at IT Harvest, an author, and a trusted advisor to vendors, VCs, and private equity firms. Today, I'm talking with Jaime Jorge, who is founder and CEO of Codacy, and we will be talking about the critical security challenges facing software development in the age of AI. Jaime, welcome to the show. I have been seeing an incredible acceleration in software development, thanks in large part due to the introduction of AI. Tools like GitHub, Copilot, and Cursor have become mainstream, and we're talking about vibe coding. Developers are able to write code faster than ever before, and even non-developers like me are dabbling in creating new tools. So this new era of AI-assisted coding is creating some fascinating new trends in the market. Why don't we jump in, talk about those trends, and also talk about what your motivation was for starting Codacy.
Sounds good, Richard. Thanks so much for having me. Without a doubt, one of the most significant trends that we're seeing is coding agents, right? Autonomous coding agents, whether those exist in the CLI or inside your IDE or inside other products. They're becoming extremely good and taking a prompt and creating full-fledged products, getting even to the intentions that users have. And so, yeah, you can pick up a tool like Lovable and take it from one simple prompt, create a whole landing page and get to market very quickly. So we're seeing this with a lot of enthusiasm, particularly in our own company. It almost seems like Codacy was created exactly for this moment. What we do at Codacy is an end-to-end security analysis platform. And so what we're seeing as a response to this is one of the biggest rises in security vulnerabilities to date. In fact, if we see certain communities, it's almost like a game to see how fast can we exploit vulnerabilities in some of these applications that are created so quickly. And so with speed, certainly comes consequences. And one of the trends that we're seeing is tools, not only like Codacy, but also AI playing as security researchers, because also those are faster to market from some of these players. But these are also a bit problematic because they are non-deterministic. And so at Codacy, we are very firm believers that anything that is random can only be tamed, controlled, organized by deterministic, predictable analysis. And that's really what we're trying to do here at Codacy.
So with this new speed, we've also seen a rise in what I referred to as vibe coding. The data is starting to show that AI-generated code frequently contains vulnerabilities, like you said. I think, what were the numbers like? Over 40% for sure. And that's creating a real chasm between fast development and secure enterprise-grade software. What are the key problems that arise from this explosion of potentially insecure code?
Yeah, we're seeing the same stats, particularly 30-50% of code generated having vulnerabilities, which is wild. And so some of the things that we see, key problems, is that these explosion of vulnerabilities, it really exists because also we have the assumption that we don't really need to care about that, right? That we can fully delegate the decisions on the concerns of actually generated code. And so these practices that we've been having for a long time, things such as security by design and making sure that we review each other's code, these are not to be shortcutted. These, now more than ever, these need to exist. And so I think key problems definitely are that there's a misunderstanding of using these technologies to go super fast, and I can go to market quickly, but then I have a responsibility twice as much to review code humanly, or to analyze it, or to just make sure that other humans sign it off and to review it right before it gets to production. And so I think those are some of the key problems that we see.
Help me out, because I assume that mature organizations, at least mature in their coding and development practices, have processes in place to scan code, SAST, DAST, etc. So because they're coding faster, how does that impact that process? Don't they just do more scanning and still output quality product?
I think as we speak, there's a whole chasm that is being crossed, in which these tools are getting into the enterprise. So the enterprise is still understanding the answer to that question, and as we see it. Some companies don't have yet policies. Some companies believe they don't have developers using tools, but actually they are spreading like wildfire. And so I think companies are starting to define certain policies, particularly on the use of AI, which tools, models, and whatever resources are going to be applied in order to use AI with coding. But there's fear. Particularly, studies show that around 92% of security leaders are concerned about generated code, and 2/3 have already tried to ban AI code generation from even existing. And so it's a big concern. It's a big concern, and it's unavoidable, which is also interesting.
Yeah, so I guess we would call what's going on not shadow IT, but shadow dev.
Exactly that.
Yeah, which is crazy. Now, mind you, we've crossed this problem before with so-called no-code app development, but those had the advantage in that the platform, be it Bubble or one of the others, had inherent security in it. Some major security flaws, mind you, but still wouldn't introduce all of the classic vulnerabilities.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Although the scale of what we're seeing today, I think it's just any person can pick up a text box in one of these new products and create a new product and call themselves, that's really important, but that we can really ship to production and show people, and then be puzzled when there are vulnerabilities that are exploited. And so I think the scale is unimaginably higher than there was when we were talking about no code, because there were still some boxes to drag when we had no code. Now is just, I want this and I want it now.
Right. So could you walk us through how Codacy's platform directly addresses these security and quality challenges, and how does it empower developers and security teams, and beyond what you would get from homegrown AI solutions?
Sounds good. We provide end-to-end testing, right? So from the moment the line of code is written, whether by humans or AI, we apply dozens of thousands of code analysis rules, secret scanning, license tracking, composition analysis to check vulnerabilities of the libraries being used. And we do that immediately as code is being written in IDEs. And we cover, I think, 60 to 70% of IDEs in the market that are being used. And that's really interesting, because also we make sure that, for example, when you're interacting with a coding agent, that we interject after code is being generated so that you accept code that is secure. So that's really important. Afterwards, we also operate at the code review level, so after code being written, so that when you're reviewing code, you have tons of information where there's also quality insights, such as code coverage, code application, code complexity, plus all the security insights and dashboards and risk management. And then afterwards, when code is deployed, we apply DAST and vulnerability checking to make sure that everything is tight. So we like to think of ourselves as really the last security tool you're likely to need. as a company developing software. We have standards, we have gates so that we can enforce and codify your requirements as a company. And again, we're kind of reinventing the playbook of what it is to code with AI. So that's really our focus nowadays.
Is there any use of AI in your platform?
Very little. We do have a few features that we're developing, have developed to use AI, to leverage AI to, for example, suggest fixes on some of the issues that we find. Although we're trying to push more and more towards the IDE. So when we have issues, we want for some of the best coding agents out there, which exist within your IDE, to actually fix those issues. They have a ton of context. We do use AI and a number of other tools. Particularly, we find similarities of code generated or a code essentially made by even humans with licensed code, GPL v3, GPL v2, to make sure that companies and coding agents are not entering into problematic territories when it comes to licenses. And therefore putting a company at risk of any legal issues. So we also use AI to do that, and we're going to inject in certain points, but we want to be the predictable security layer of your coding workflow.
And that could play into the down road need by many supply chain organizations for an SBOM. So you would know as you're building the code the kinds of things that are being included.
Correct that. I think that's really smart. It's one of the directions that we're going to be exploring very soon, is how to map out all these different components of your workflow and environment.
So what's next for Codacy, and how do you see the role of security platforms evolving to meet the challenges of these, AI-enhanced, increasingly autonomous development life cycles?
We've always been very driven by helping developers and security teams to develop exceptional products, trustworthy products that really, bring the best value to market possible. With the advent of AI coding, we are very fast, we're accelerating our move towards making sure that coding agents, if those are one of the key elements or components of our workflow, to also deliver code that is secure. So our dream is that every software development agent can enforce security, and obviously using Codacy, so that there's no vulnerabilities being introduced. If we are to delegate some of our decision making or some of our security by design to these coding agents, then we need the coding agents to be to do code that is correct and that is secure. And that's really one of the big priorities that we have as a company. As we typically say internally, is we cannot stop this wave. And I don't think that should be the focus, but we can make it better. We can make it more trustworthy. And that's going to be the mission of Codacy for the years to come.
For listeners, if they want to get started with Codacy, what does that journey look like? Where do they start? They've got a process. They're using either Cursor or Claude Code, or how do they integrate Codacy into their existing processes quickly?
So typically companies come to us because they either have requirements or have compliance, or they have some need that they want to cover. And so when it comes from more of a coverage perspective of security analysis, we typically like to be involved and really understand those requirements. So talk to us. If you're a development team or a squad or just an individual developer, you can start by using our Guardrails ID extension that exists for Cursor, for VS Code, for Windsurf. Also very soon we're going to announce for IntelliJ, JetBrains. And that is a free extension that you could use to have all the tools, all the code analysis that is appropriate. It's also in fast to run to create a Guardrails experience when you're coding with AI. That also gives you the ability to then create a Codacy account and then enforce that at this central level. But essentially, we see these two things: developers trying to enforce some coding standards for either themselves and their teams, or security leaders or management or software development leaders trying to enforce that across the board to make sure that everyone is developing software that is trustworthy.
If you had to summarize one key takeaway from this podcast for CISOs, CTOs, CIOs, the other IT decision makers out there, what would it be and why?
AI is here, and your team is likely already using tools potentially that you don't know about. And unfortunately, there's not much choice in saying no to AI in code. Obviously, couldn't enforce it, but over time, the industry is moving in this direction very quickly. But we do all have a choice in how we do it. And so AI generated code can be secure if we empower our tools and our agents with capability, with security capability. So you can move fast if you have the right guardrails. And so some of the best decisions we made as an industry over the last few decades, including CI/CD, code review, security by design, can now enable us as an industry to use AI effectively. Right. So those actually can be used today to make sure that AI is safe. We should not delegate fully decisions, review, coding, and just sip on our coffees while AI does all the work. We can move fast if we have the right policies and tools, and certainly want to play a part. So think of us when you think about employing a solution.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jaime, for joining us today. We had a great conversation about the challenges that AI bring to our coding processes. Also, thank you to everyone listening. We hope you took a lot away from today's podcast. For further information on AI and Codacy's capabilities, head on over to codacy.com, Codacy. We'll be back next week with another episode in our podcast series. Until then, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on all major platforms and follow the conversation on our socials at EM360Tech on Twitter and LinkedIn. And for more great daily content, head over to em360tech.com.